Hey there, it's Scott, startatherapypractice.com, and guess what? The government's giving away free money. Well, you got to jump through some hoops, and I came across some free money that the federal government is giving out to those therapists, those providers who have billed Medicaid. And so we're going to go over that here in just a minute. But real quick, if you haven't been over to my website, this is it right here, and you can see me talking right there. And so if you scroll down, if you want to listen to that video right there, when you go to startatherapypractice.com, click on Listen to Video, and I've got a free webinar coming up. You can register for that to learn how to start your own therapy practice. Yeah, just scroll down there on that page. I got some free forms that I want to give you to get you started in your private practice. You can get that there. And I got some tools, got a podcast, got some blog posts, some videos. And if you really want to up your game, you want to become a member of the Academy of Private Practice, and that's over there too at startatherapypractice.com. All right, so I'm gathering information on what's called the Provider Relief Distribution. And what keyed me in on this specifically was if you've billed Medicaid, your state Medicaid, then the federal government is providing some funds, some relief because of coronavirus. So we're going to go over the information in that. And this right here, the Medicaid and CHIP providers, they're allocating $15 billion to those of us who have billed Medicaid. So let's check this out. All right, so here's the main page for the CARES Act provider relief. So this was an act passed by Congress here recently. And as you can see right here, there's some webinars. And the webinars are, if you're watching this fairly recent, you might be able to catch this June 25th. So I watched the June 23rd one, and it's right here. And I'll put links down below to everything here that I'm talking about. So you can watch this recorded webinar that is over here on the main page for the CARES Act. If you scroll down on this page, you can see there's different links. There's this says for providers. This says about the Provider Relief Fund. You can see data. So what's going to happen is everybody who receives funds from this CARES Act, they go into a database. And I'll show you more about that here in a little bit. The FAQs, frequently asked questions, is very helpful here. And I'll show you some key points from the FAQs that I found. This is just a YouTube video that covers the general information about the CARES Act. And it's pretty good. It's like 2 minutes long. So if you click on the FAQ link, it takes you right here. And you can see that it has an overview, attestation, rejecting payment. So it has different categories here you can click on, and it will take you to that point on this page. The one we're looking at right here is the Medicaid distribution right here. Now what I did is I downloaded the FAQs in a PDF form. And let's take a look at some key highlights there real quick. So this is the PDF version of the FAQs. It was a little easier for me to search for key phrases in here. So if we scroll down here, you'll notice it asks who is eligible to receive payments from the Provider Relief Fund. So there's both a general and a targeted distribution. If you've already received a general distribution, you can't get the targeted, you can't get the Medicaid distribution that I'm going to be talking about here in a minute. So the general distribution, it took me a little bit to find this, which is actually at the top of the page right here, is if you've billed Medicare. So if you have done the application for general distribution because you bill Medicare, you're not going to get any more funds from the targeted distributions that this is talking about here. And I'm talking about Medicaid specifically. So if we scroll down here, it says, is this a loan or is this a grant? It's kind of neither. It's kind of a payment. And the payment is going to determine, you have to follow some terms and conditions right here. So in other words, you got to jump through some hoops and make sure that you follow some rules. If we scroll down a little bit more, it says, how should providers classify that payment? So on your taxes, how are you going to classify that? And basically, it's kind of kicking the can down the road right here. It's going to say CMS is issuing guidance about how to classify this payment. So if we scroll down a little bit further, it's interesting here. It says, what oversight or enforcement mechanisms will HHS use to ensure providers meet the terms and the conditions, the rules, right? So I highlighted here, recipients will be required to submit documents. They've kind of left this generic. They haven't made up all the rules yet and how they're going to collect the information to see if you actually use the money for its intended purpose. So just know that there's going to be some paperwork to fill out, but they haven't created that paperwork yet. So just know that. All right, we scroll down a little bit further in the FAQs, and it says right here, what's the definition of an executive to pay level? So that's part of the terms and the conditions, and we'll look at that here in just a second, but it's defining this executive to pay level. And what I highlighted here is that none of the funds that you get from this money, this distribution, can be used to pay an executive more than a salary of $197,000. Now, if you're a therapist with a private practice, you're probably not going to get enough money from this to equal $197,000. If you do, you're making a lot of money in your private practice, because as I'll show you here in a minute, the allocation is 2% of your annual gross revenue. That would be a lot of revenue. Let's scroll down a little bit more. So this is important if you've applied for the Provider Protection Program. I'm sorry, the Paycheck Protection Program. If you've gotten money through that, this question here says, does that affect how you can use payments from the Provider Relief Fund? Does accepting Provider Relief Fund payments preclude a provider, it's kind of a tongue twister, organization from seeking other funds? It says there's no direct ban under CARES Act on accepting a payment from the Provider Relief Fund and other sources, so long as the payment from the Provider Relief Fund is used only for permissible purposes, and you comply with the terms and conditions. All right, let's scroll down a little bit more. This is kind of the meat of the situation here. It says the terms and conditions state that the Provider Relief Fund's payments will only be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus, and shall reimburse the recipient only for health care related expenses or, there's a big or right there, lost revenues that are attributed to coronavirus. So if we scroll down a little bit, it says what expenses or lost revenues are considered eligible for this reimbursement. So this is gives these bullet points right here. And again, I'll put a link to these FAQs. But take a look at these bullet points. The last one I highlighted was acquiring additional resources, including facilities, equipment, supplies, healthcare practice, staffing, technology to expand or preserve care delivery. That's important. But what's even more important, if we scroll down a little bit further, and this highlighted right here, is the term lost revenues. What in the world is that talking about? It means any revenue that you as a healthcare provider or you as a business lost due to coronavirus. Did you shut down your private practice? That's what it's telling me right there. Now again, I'm not telling you to apply for this Provider Relief Fund. I'm just giving you some information here. I'm not a expert on any of this by any means, but I do want to share the information that I'm coming across in hopefully a helpful fashion. So take a look at this, read it, and it does give some bullet points right here that you can use these funds for. So did you lose money due to coronavirus? It says these costs do not need to be specific to providing care for possible or actual coronavirus patients. That's important. But the lost revenue that the Provider Relief Fund payment covers must have been due to coronavirus. Did you have to close your private practice because of coronavirus? And so it says HHS encourages the use of funds to cover lost revenues so that providers can respond to the coronavirus public health emergency by maintaining healthcare delivery capacity. So, and it gives these examples right here, such as employee or contractor payroll, employee health insurance, rent, equipment leased payments, electronic health records licensing fees. So do you use an EHR, an EMR software? You probably have to pay a monthly payment for that. Scroll down a little bit more. So it says you may use any reasonable method of estimating the revenue during March and April of 2020 compared to COVID-19 not appeared. So what it's saying is, do you have a budget for that time period? And what's the loss compared to the budget? The other thing you can do is compare it to a previous year to show that loss for those 2 months where coronavirus affected your private practice. All right, so here's the terms and the conditions. This is a whole separate document right here, and I'll share a link with that also down below. So the terms and conditions for the Provider Relief Funds, if we scroll down here, it says the recipient means either a healthcare provider, if you're a therapist, whether an individual or an entity. So if you're just an individual therapist and you're billing Medicaid directly, you would qualify, it would appear to me. If you're a business, like mine is a business, my private practice is a business, and that would be an entity, and that we received Medicaid payments because we're billing Medicaid directly. Scroll down a little bit more. It says the recipient certifies that the payment will only be used to prevent, prepare for, or respond to coronavirus. And we just went through that in the frequently asked questions. So it also is for lost revenue. And it says that you'll not use the payment to reimburse expenses or losses that have been reimbursed from other sources, or that other sources are obligated to reimburse. So you kind of have to, that's kind of generic to me, but the one of the main points is that if you've received funds from the general distribution, because you bill Medicare, you're not going to be eligible for receiving funds because you bill Medicaid. It's kind of double dipping, it seems. We're going to have to submit reports as the secretary determines are needed to ensure compliance. Now, they haven't made up the paperwork for this, what kind of reports we're going to have to fill out to show them that how we've used this money. But it stands to reason they want to know how you're using the money. So be sure you keep good notes. If you get this money, you need to keep receipts. You need to have a paper trail and keep that filed somewhere so you can demonstrate that you use the funds appropriately. All right, let's scroll down a little bit. And remember, I was talking about executive 2-level pay. That's where it comes from, this terms and conditions. Executive pay. None of the funds appropriated in this title shall be used to pay the salary of an individual through a grant or other extramural mechanism at the rate of that exceeds executive level 2. That was $197,000. So I don't think we have anything to worry about that as therapists, because we're not going to get that much money probably. 2% of your gross revenue, you'd had to make a lot of gross revenue for 2% to exceed basically $200,000. I hope you are, though. Hope you're making that much money. Now, the rest of this terms and conditions, as far as I can tell, is explaining how not to spend the money. So you're not going to spend the money by funding prohibition for gun control advocacy. That's kind of for lobbying purposes. So the rest of this kind of goes over what not to spend the money on. All right, who's eligible to apply for this provider relief funding? So you have to meet these 6 requirements right here. If you did not receive from the general fund, again, if you received from the general fund, means you probably are billing Medicare. So if you've received money from the general fund, you can't apply for this one. This is for a targeted fund, Medicaid specifically. Because right here, number 2, it says you must have directly billed Medicaid for healthcare related services during the period of January 1, 2018. So if you did not exist as a private practice back in 2018 billing Medicaid directly, you're not going to be eligible for this. You would have had to have billed Medicaid back in January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2019. So if you're brand new, you're not going to be eligible for this. But don't give up hope. They're talking about money for other targeted entities or providers down the road. So you might be able to access funds for a different targeted allocation. So this could include a subsidiary that has billed Medicaid for healthcare related services during that period also. You must have either filed a federal income tax for fiscal years 2017, 2018, or 2019. And you're going to need that anyway to kind of compare how much lost revenue you had, right? You must have provided patient care after January 31st, 2020. That's this year. You must not have permanently ceased providing patient care directly. So if you closed your doors and you're not in business anymore, you're not providing therapy anymore, you're not going to be eligible for this money. So also, number 6, if the applicant is an individual and you have gross receipts or sales from providing patient care reported on a 1040 form, excluding income reported on a W-2 statutory employee. So that's the rules. That's the 6 requirements in order to be eligible for these funds. And again, I'll put a link down below to this right here. And so when you get to this one is called the instructions. When you get to the instructions, scroll down a little bit, and it's almost at the top of the first page, who's eligible to apply. Now, the deadline to submit an application for these funds is right here, July 20th, 2020. So make sure you get your application in before then if you're eligible. And the webinar that I watched said that they're going to do rolling payments, and you should be seeing payments. I don't think they really know how quick, but at least by the end of August, but hopefully a little bit sooner. So the sooner you get your application in, the sooner you're going to get your money from this allocation. Now, to actually apply for the funding, you have to go to this website right here, and I'll put a link down below, and you're going to click on Apply for Funding. Now, after you do that, any funds that you get is going to go into a database that is out there on the internet. And so let me show you that page real quick. So on this page right here, which I'll put a link down below to, is the HHS Provider Relief Fund. And if you scroll down on this page, it's going to show you the providers that have received allocations, received money from this distribution. Now what you can do is you can click on View Data right here, and it takes you to this page right here. Now you can scroll through these. It's going to take you a long time to try. If you just keep clicking Next, that's going to take a while. You can export the data by clicking right over here on Export and download it. What I did is I downloaded it for Excel. Now once you do that, you can go, if you don't have Microsoft Excel, but you do have a Gmail account, you have Google Docs. And so what you want to do is go to your docs.google, click on blank, and it'll allow you to upload that CSV document in order to filter it. All right, so let's go through this. Let's apply for it. See if I can figure this out. I'm going to go over here to this page. Like I said, there'll be a link down below. I'm going to apply for funding. All right, so here's the page that comes up. But before we begin, I do want to explain that in the webinar, and I'll go over here to the webinar page that you can rewatch. In the webinar right here, at the time of, let's see, 21 minutes. So at 21 minutes, about 21:15, they actually demonstrate how to go through this portal, how to make application. So if you want to watch the webinar, you can watch all of it, or just skip to the 21-minute mark, and you can watch them go through this. So let's go back over here to here, and we have to sign in. Now, if you see right here, set up an Optum ID. So actually United Healthcare is managing how to apply for these funds. You don't have to be in network with United Healthcare or Optum, but you do have to have or create an ID. I don't think I have a United Healthcare ID, but I might need to check on that. So Optum is United Healthcare's arm of software, I guess. That's the way I can explain it, but I'm going to start my registration and get my Optum ID. All right, so I got my Optum ID, but they're going to email it to me. See right here? Now, after you get your Optum ID, you have to go back to the application website for the provider relief funds. So if you leave that tab open, you can just skip right back in there. So you're going to click on Sign In. Now, if you already have one, you would have clicked here, Sign In with your Optum ID. So let's sign in. So this is an Optum run website. That's who the Department of Health has farmed this process out to. So we're going to, if you want to sign up for updates, you can do that, but we're going to continue with the application. So after you sign up for the updates, it wants your tax identification number. Now that could be your personal tax identification number if you're not incorporated, if you're a single provider. If you're a business, it's going to want your tax identification number. So if you're a single provider and you don't have an EIN number, you're going to probably use your Social Security number. I have a business, so I'm going to use my EIN number. If you're a business, you're going to put your business name right here as it's displayed on your W-9 form. So that's important. Make sure that is exactly like your W-9 form. Read through these if you can, which hopefully you can. You're going to check off each one. Scroll down, tell them you're not a robot, unless you are a robot, and then that would be kind of weird. And then you're going to accept it. Now it wants to know what type of federal tax classification your business is if you're a business. If you're an individual, you're going to say you're an individual, I'm actually an S-Corp. Now if you're tax exempt, you're going to want to choose one of these down here. After you do that, click Continue. Now I'm understanding a billing company to be somebody that totally does your billing, not necessarily a clearinghouse. So my company does use a clearinghouse with our EMR. And if you click on yes, that you use a billing company, it's going to want their the billing company name and their address and location. Doesn't want any other information from them. So we do use a clearinghouse, but I'm not taking this to be a clearinghouse. And I can't find any information in the frequently asked questions or terms and conditions or instructions on this. So if you have other information about this that is contrary to what I'm thinking, please let me know so I can correct that. But I'm going to say that I do not use a billing company, but we do use a clearinghouse. To me, that's two different things. And click continue. Now I want some detail about your practice, your primary servicing location, and submitter name, submitter email, and then it's going to want to know if you're a group or an individual. So let me fill this out real quick. So when I scroll down on that same page of the application, I put our group NPI in there, but I don't know the group NPI effective date. But we can go look that up, and I'll give you a link on how to do that on the NPI registry search. So I'm going to go look up when my effective date is. And to do that, all you have to do is you have to have your NPI, put that in there, click search, and it's going to give us some good information. By the way, this is a way to search any provider's NPI. So here we are, and I did a search, and what we're looking for is the enumeration date 2/23/07. Been around for a while. So what is meant by subsidiary? The tax identification numbers of subsidiary associates. So if we go back over here to the written instructions, because it wasn't really in the webinar explained very well, a subsidiary means an entity that is a disregarded entity for federal income tax purposes and reports its gross revenues on the applicant's federal income tax return lines for gross receipts. So do you have any subsidiaries that are reporting on your gross receipts or sales or program service revenue? That might be a question for your accountant. All right, now we're on the confirmation page. Double check all of your information, because if any of it's wrong, it's going to delay payment to you, and you don't want to do that. So check every dotted I, check every information, every letter, every number to make sure it's correct. After you click submit, it takes you back to this dashboard, and as you can see, we've done the first step right here. We got a green check mark. Not sure why you'd want to add another organization tax identification number there, but I guess you can. And so the next step is to do revenue and tax information, and we're going to click get started. So we have to fill in the red outlined areas right here on this DocuSign document. And then we come to applicant type on this. And what is that all about? So if we go back to the instruction, it tells us the applicant type. Right here, applicant type, and it gives you these different types to put in here. But notice here it says, if the applicant does not operate a facility as defined in field 6, enter 0. I don't think there's any wrong answer here. You just have to determine what comes closest to what type of service you're providing. It looks like I would be an AG because we do developmental disabled services, OT, PT, and speech. I think possibly we could also choose a clinic or a center because we have multiple clinics, which now that I think about it is probably more appropriate for us. So I put CL here for clinic, and number of facilities, we have 3. Beds, we don't have any beds. I wish I had a bed sometimes to take a nap. Total number of FTE. What's an FTE? So back on the written instructions, as you can see right here, the total number of FTEs, full-time employees. So these are W-2 employees, not independent contractors. And all of my therapists are independent contractors, so I can't count them. So providing patient care. So that's what an FTE is. An FTE is work whichever number of hours the applicant considers to be minimum for a normal work week. So that could be 37.5 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours. So how many full-time employees, W-2 employees, do you have working, I would say, at least 37.5 hours a week? And it gives you a little bit of insight right here. To compute FTE of a part-time provider, it says divide the total number of hours worked by the provider by the total number of hours that your organization considers to be a normal work week. All right, here's where it gets a little tricky right here. It wants the gross revenue, in the fiscal year of the gross revenue, 2017, 18, or 19, the percentage of gross revenue from patient care. So we've got to do a little bit of math right here. This, it helps to look at the written instructions for this area. So if we go to the written instructions, field 10, it says gross revenues. So study that just for a minute before you fill this out. You're going to need your tax returns from the most recent year that you have tax returns. Thankfully, I just had my tax returns from 2019 done, so I'm going to go check that out. Now, we get 100% of our revenues from direct patient care, so I put 100% there. The next line right here is lost revenues due to COVID-19. So how are you going to determine that? Over here on the instructions, on field 13, it says, right here it says, for example, right here, lost revenues means the amount of any patient care revenue that you as a healthcare provider lost due to coronavirus. So that might include revenue losses associated with fewer outpatient visits, canceled elective procedures or services. And it says you may use any reasonable method of estimating the revenue for March and April of 2020 compared to the same period that COVID-19 had not appeared. So for example, if you have a budget prepared and you fall short of that budget, you can use that, or you can compare it to the same time last year. I'm going to compare it to the same time last year. I'm going to go into my QuickBooks and run that report to see what March and April of 2019 had compared to March and April of 2020. So I'm going to go do that real quick. Now it's time to upload a couple of different documents. So over here, upload gross revenues worksheet if required. So if we go back over to the instructions, the gross revenue worksheet, so it says if your gross revenue adjustments are different from the applicable number shown on your tax return, you need to show that. So be sure to read those instructions. The other part of that is you have to upload your federal tax form. And so if we go back over to the instructions, field 16, the federal tax form, depending on what type of individual or entity you are, be sure to upload the correct form. So I'm S Corp, so I'm going to upload the form 1120S. The next part, it wants you to break down your revenue, and this is where QuickBooks comes in real handy. Okay, I want you to put the amount for the amount of money that you receive from the Treasury, Small Business Administration, or the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. Did you receive any money from those? Be sure to put that in here. Now I want you to enter the primary provider full-time employees under the filing tax identification number. So how many full-time employees did you have? Who are they? You got to list them out. And here's what the written instructions say. Enter the primary full-time employees of the applicant on the worksheet. So the worksheet looks like this, and you can download it right there from the instructions. But it's a spreadsheet, and you're going to enter the information, last name, first name, that provider's NPI, and what they are right there. So that's the worksheet that you're going to fill out and upload back to the application. Now it's important to note that this does not include independent contractors. So if you have therapists or other providers who are working for you who are 1099 independent contractors, you're not going to list them in these fields over here on the application. These do not include independent contractors. All right. So it looks like you do have to put a number down here. It says required number. Please see the instructions over here on the instructions. It says for the primary provider, as reported on the FTE worksheet uploaded. That's the worksheet I just showed you, is that spreadsheet. It says include only W-2 employees. So probably if you're a sole provider, if you're the only W-2 employee in your business, you're going to put your provider number. That's your NPI number. I'm sorry, that's your that should be your Social Security number or your EIN number. So if it's an individual, it's going to be your Social Security number. I'm thinking I'm going to put my Social Security number in there because basically I'm the only full-time employee for this. But if you had multiple full-time W-2 employees, you're going to fill out that spreadsheet that I showed you, and it's going to give us an opportunity to upload that. The other FTEs right here, if we go over back to the instructions, it says the other FTEs include all employees not directly providing patient care. And so this could be scheduling, billing, accounting, It's probably going to be your office help, and that's that's the numbers that you're going to put in there. And again, I would think that you're going to list that in the spreadsheet that I just showed. It looks like, I'm looking at my other screen over here, looks like that's where that would go, because if you have more than one other employee, then there's only room for that one right there. All right, here's what I'm coming up against here. When I try to enter my name for my clinic, anything you put in there, it says this, that you're trying to change is the protected sheet. To make the change, unprotect the sheet. You might be requested for a password. I don't see a password anywhere in the instructions, so I'm going to see if I can unprotect this. All right, I think I figured it out. You actually don't type right up here. You're going to type in the shaded area down below. Not real clear, but maybe you're a little bit smarter than I am when it comes to that. So you're going to type in the shaded areas because the rest of it is locked out. All right, so I'm going to take that back. I'm not actually going to put Social Security numbers in here. I just put my NPI number in here. So if you have other providers other than yourself who are W-2 employees who have an NPI number, you could put those in there. But since I'm the primary full-time employee, I'm putting my personal NPI number in here. So this is how I filled out the spreadsheet, the worksheet that they want you to fill out. I just put my clinic name, my clinic tax ID, and then you go down here in the grade spaces and you put information of your full-time employees. If they're not full-time, you have to calculate how much time over here. So I give you an example of John Q. Public, and they're 3/4 time over here. So I put myself as full-time, and if you have more W-2 employees who have an NPI number doing services for you, you're going to put them here and NPI and put if they're full-time or how much time they are. Save that, and that's what you're going to upload to the website, and I'll show you where that goes. So back over here on this page, you're going to upload that worksheet right here. So you just click on that, and we're going to go find it, upload a file. Now you have to send your IRS form 941 for the first quarter. So you got to send that in. If you don't have that, you might have to ask your accountant to send it to you. I'm going to go try to find mine right now. Okay, so I think I have all my information in here now. It took me a little bit to get that 941 because I pay them electronically and had to go sign into the federal tax website. So you might ask your accountant about that or get that beforehand before you get to the end and get stuck like I did. So I'm going to click finish, see what happens. And it says the document has been signed. So I could download it if I want to. I could print it. And I think I will download it. Always want to save a copy, anything you send to the government. So it's generating a PDF, and I'll download that and save it. I suggest you do the same thing. So notice when I sign back in here, the item it says revenue and tax information, it still says get started. I think that's because it takes a little while for DocuSign to update this other website to let them know, hey, they already filled this form out. So even though you filled the form out and you sent it, remember I saved it and it's on my computer now, I'm not going to go back through and do I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to come back tomorrow to make sure that it actually posted, and I'm waiting to sign the attest to payment and terms. So they should send me an email when that's available. All right, again, be sure to go by startatherapypractice.com. That's my website right here. And if you scroll down, you can get some free forms. And you can also check out the tools and the podcast and the blog, the other videos I have, and you can become a member of the Academy of Private Practice. And don't forget, if you scroll back up to the top, you can register for the free webinar I have coming up on how to start your own therapy practice. And if you got any benefit from this, go over to patreon.com/startatherapypractice and you can become a patron. Just scroll down there a little bit. And I would love for you to become a patron if you derived any benefit from this or some other videos or tools that I have. If you want to return the favor, sure appreciate that. If you need anything, let me know. All right, until next time, Godspeed to you and your practice.